Happy draft month, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mock Draft Tuesday. I'm actually recording this on Monday night. You guys are probably seeing this on Tuesday, or that's at least when it's being uploaded. And yeah, we are back with another Denver Broncos mock draft. I'm titling this one 2.0 because I've done a lot of them. And I've done like 3 shorter ones in previous videos, but this is going to be a full 7-round mock draft. That's why it's labeled 2.0. And yeah, like I mentioned, it's draft month. The draft will be 3 weeks away on Thursday, so we're getting very close here, and we're only going to have a couple more mock drafts. And as we're leading up to that, I'm going to have a schedule of videos releasing. I'm not going to do what I did last year of releasing my top 10 players per position, because honestly, that was a grind and that took up a lot of time. But I am going to be releasing some videos. I'm going to be releasing my final Broncos mock draft, my final NFL mock draft. I'll do like my top 50 players or something like that as we get closer to the draft. And then if you want positional rankings, hey, stop by my draft stream, which I do want to announce that I am going to be streaming all 3 days of the draft again. I love the NFL draft, so those are some of my favorite streams to do. So we will be streaming the draft if any of you were wondering. But that's enough of that. Let's go ahead. Let's jump in. Let's jump straight in to this mock draft 2.0. And first things first, let's go ahead. Let's look at all of the picks that the Broncos have in the 2025 NFL Draft. So we have our own first, second, third, fourth, and sixth round pick. Well, the 5th round pick, I believe, I'm trying to remember what that was traded away for. I think that was traded away in the Bradley Chubb trade when we sent him to the Dolphins. I think it was included in that. And then we also have 2, and I could be wrong on that, but we do have 2 additional 6th-round picks, one from the Cardinals, and that pick was acquired when we traded Baron Browning to the Cardinals earlier this season. And we have a 6th-round pick from the Eagles, which we acquired when we sent tight end Albert Okwebunam over to them a few seasons back. So 3 6th and then a pick in every round essentially, but the 5th and the 7th. So those are the Broncos picks. I'm sure you know that those are the Broncos picks. I just want to reiterate that for maybe fans who aren't Broncos fans who are just interested in checking out a Denver Broncos mock draft. And here at pick 20, I'm going with running back TreVeyon Henderson out of Ohio State, because to me, it's starting to feel like if you want Henderson and you don't take him at 20, well, I should say if you don't take him at 20, or if you trade down and don't take him, I think you're either going to have to trade up into the late first again, or you're going to have to trade up into the early second to get him, because it's starting to sound like both of the top 2 running backs on most consensus boards, I should say, Ashton Jeanty and Amarian Hampton, sounds like they're going to go early. And it sounds like Ashton Jeanty, he's probably going to end up in Vegas with the Raiders, unfortunately for us Broncos fans. And then I honestly think that Ben Johnson, the new head coach for the Bears, is going to draft Amarian Hampton with what he's done with obviously David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs up in Detroit. So I think that those 2 backs are going to go early. And honestly, I know this is controversial, but I've said it before, TreVeyon Henderson is my RB2 in this class. And so being able to pick him at pick 20, I think would be a phenomenal pick for the Broncos. Running back is by far and away our biggest need on the team, and you don't necessarily draft for need, it's best player available, but I do think that TreVeyon Henderson, I really like him as a talent, so I would have no problem picking him here at number 20. And like I mentioned, running back is our biggest need, so it's tough because this is a deep running back class, but why not go get your guy as the bell cow back who's going to take that pressure off of Bo Nix, right? You know, he had a phenomenal rookie season, but you want to help him out. You know, he's got a solid line, but you want to help him out by giving him a run game, and TreVeyon Henderson will do just that. He's going to be an effective back. He's going to get into open space. He's got the speed to get away, going to make players miss in the open space. He is a solid receiver as a running back, but the biggest thing that I mention every time I talk about TreVeyon Henderson is he's a willing pass protector. You can keep him in the backfield to protect for Bo Nix, and he'll be that extra blocker to pick up blitzers if you need him to, and that is a big underrated part of TreVeyon Henderson's game that I don't feel like gets talked about enough. And so to me, TreVeyon Henderson is kind of the guy for the Broncos right now. If I were to say, and obviously this is just my opinion, I don't have any sources, I don't have any inside information. This is obviously just based off of my observation of the roster and the needs and kind of the talent that's going to be available at pick 20. To me, I think there are 3 players that are most likely to go to the Broncos because I do think we are going to address offense in the draft, right? We went defense in free agency, and, if there is a talented defensive player still on the board and you go best player available, absolutely you could see Walter Nolan or someone like that go and be the Broncos pick at 20. But I have a feeling most likely it's going to be on offense, and either that is going to be a running back or a wide receiver. And to me, what it feels like most likely right now, in my personal opinion, and I could be feeling this way because these are my guys, players that I would like for the Broncos to draft. It's Travion Henderson, obviously, Luther Burden, who's my guy in this draft, and then Emeka Ibuka. I feel like those are kind of the 3 players I'm feeling for the Broncos right now. Again, don't have any inside information, don't have any sources, and like I said, could just because those are all some of my favorite players in the draft, but that's kind of what I'm feeling right now. You can see what Travion Henderson did at Ohio State, and, because of Judkins transferring into Ohio State, he doesn't have as much wear and tear on him that he could have had if he was the sole bell cow back. But yeah, Travion Henderson is my guy, and instantly he would be the running back 1 for the Broncos. I say it every time I make a mock draft. Whoever the Broncos draft, if it's in the, I would say, first 3, even potentially first 4 rounds, they would be the running back 1 on this team because of how deep it is. And then you can choose who you want to be your RB2, whether that's going to be McLaughlin as the scat back or Estime as your power guy. One of them, essentially they're going to be your 2A, 2B, right? Henderson's going to be your number 1, and then if you need more of a physical runner, you're going to put an Estime. If you need that scat kind of runner who's going to make players miss in the open space, maybe needs another receiver, if you want to give Travion Henderson some rest, you throw in McLaughlin. And then I think you have to take 2 rookies in this class without you signing a veteran. That's just how I'm feeling. Maybe the Broncos don't, but I do think a second rookie will be drafted, and I'm probably in every single one of my mocks that I'm going to do 7 rounds for the Broncos, I probably am going to take 2 running backs just because of how deep the class is, right? That and the defensive line, both interior and edge, super deep classes. So I'm probably going to be taking 2 running backs and eventually addressing the defensive line somewhere. And then for Beatty and Watson, 2 depth guys, 2 guys who are like fringe roster practice squad type of guys who, if you need to call one up from the practice squad, you can. But, we'll see how the rest of the roster plays out to see if one of them makes it. Then moving on to the second round, and I made this a couple days ago, but I'm not really feeling like Jaden Higgins is going to be available at 51. I think if you want him, you're probably going to have to move up in the second round, maybe even into the late first, but early second is kind of where I see him going. If I were to place him, right, you have the top guys at wide receiver. You got Travis Hunter, but we know why he's being drafted. So if we just look at the pure receivers outside of Hunter, right, you got Ted McMillan, who is starting to fall down boards a little bit. You got Matthew Golden. You got Luther Burden. You got Emeka Ibuka. I'm trying to think, is there another guy? But I think those are the big 4. And then I think after that, for me, I think it's probably Jaden Higgins. He's up there. So it's going to depend on what happens with the rest of the receivers, whether he is taken in the first or whether he falls into the second. But if he falls to the second, he is not going to be available for very long. So if you want him, you're going to have to go up and get him. And he's a guy who can be a contested ball getter. Maybe not the greatest, but he can go and do that. He's mostly going to be a guy who uses his route running to get open and make catches. He's not going to be a big yards after catch type of guy. He needs to improve in that area, but he's someone who can get open, which is desperately what the Broncos need. And, I was honestly lower on Higgins. I would say even a few weeks ago, I was like, Jaden Higgins, I wasn't as high on him. And then I started to look at the film and watch him play, and I was like, okay, yeah, he's going to be a solid receiver. And the biggest thing we need is someone who can get open. Yeah, you would like to see Higgins make some more yards after the catch and pick up additional yardage, but honestly at this point we need someone who can get open so Bo can throw it to them. So I really like that and what Jaden Higgins brings to the team. He would be the wide receiver 2. You got Sutton. He's going to be your X no matter what. He is a down threat, the downfield deep threat guy. Jaden Higgins is going to get open. Mims is your speed guy. You got Devon Vele as the bigger slot option. Troy Franklin, again, as I mentioned in every video, someone who I like as a someone who can still develop, and I like the high upside that Franklin has. And then Sherfield is the special teamer. Moving on into the third round, I have Joshua Farmer, defensive lineman out of Florida State. Like I mentioned, I really want to get in on the running back class and the defensive line class. The edge and the interior on that defensive line, it is a very, very deep class, and we could go and address the edge, but I kind of like where we're sitting in that area as opposed to the interior of the defensive line. As I mentioned in the last mock draft, is we got 3 guys who are going to be upcoming free agents, right? If we go over here, it's going to be Malcolm Roach is going to be a free agent after the season. John Franklin Myers is going to be a free agent after the season. And Zach Allen is going to be a free agent after the season. Now, ideally, you'd like to get an extension done with Zach Allen. You would like to keep Franklin Myers. You would like to keep everyone around, quite frankly. But if that's not possible, this is a loaded class that I want to get in on at some point. I think we have to use one of our first 4 picks on the defensive line. If we don't and we wait till the 6th round, it's like, okay, you're still getting a guy, but you could have maybe better value with one of the first 4 picks. And I like Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. He's going to be a guy who is going to be a pass rusher, maybe needs to improve a little bit in the run stopping game, but honestly, I don't mind that because I love the upside that Farmer brings. He's not going to be a guy you have to thrust into the starting lineup immediately, right? He can be a rotational piece, or you can use year 1 to develop him and then see how that plays out and, see who you re-sign, see who you extend, see who leaves in free agency, and then you have Joshua Farmer to fill in. A high talent, a high upside guy snagging here in the 3rd round. And honestly, I do think that he would be a guy who can rotate in. Maybe you have him and Malcolm Roach rotate in some packages, right? He's a guy who I think can make an instant impact. Maybe isn't a starter in year 1, but who can make an instant impact year 1 for the Broncos on the defensive line. Moving into the 4th round, this is where we grab a tight end. And I waited till the 4th round because the 3rd round can be a little bit weird with tight end value. There are some tight ends who I like, some tight ends who I wouldn't like in the 3rd round. And obviously, that's just my opinion. But, you got Warren, you got Loveland as those top guys. And then after that, you look and it's, Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor out of LSU, right? There's a couple guys who are going in the 2nd round. It's like, I wouldn't mind it, but I think there's better value at tight end, and I really like, not just at tight end, but in each position. I liked Jaden Higgins better in the 2nd round. In the 3rd round, I like Joshua Farmer, right? And I might be a little bit higher on Luke Lachey than a lot of people are, right? He didn't have insane production at Iowa, but he's going to be a guy who's going to get open. Again, that's kind of a theme. He's going to get open. Maybe not great in the yards after the catch. Isn't the greatest blocker, right? Has some developing to do as a tight end. But I love the upside of Luke Lachey. In fact, if you look back to some of my mock drafts last year, Luke Lachey was a potential draft candidate last year, I believe. And I liked him last year. I thought he was going to have a bigger season than he did. Didn't have the craziest season, so isn't super high on a lot of people's boards. But honestly, I think Luke Lachey is a sleeper based on the production I've seen. And maybe I do have some bias towards Iowa tight ends just because of how many are in the league and producing, right? You got George Kittle, you got TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, Sam Laporta. There's a ton of guys from Iowa. I guess you could throw Eric All in that conversation, although he didn't have the craziest rookie year last season. But obviously, Iowa is tight end you, in my opinion. And I love Luke Lachey. I think he's a fantastic prospect. Although I think if you drafted him a little bit earlier, if you drafted him in the 3rd, that would be a little high. I think right here in the 4th, 5th round, although the Broncos don't have a 5th round pick, this is kind of the sweet spot for Luke Lachey, someone who I'm really high on and who I would love as a developmental tight end for the Broncos, right? You got Evan Ingram, who you're going to use as a wide receiver pretty much, and you're going to have Adam Troutman is going to be your hybrid kind of tight end. He's going to put his hand in the dirt. He's going to go out for a couple pass patterns, catch a couple passes, but is going to mostly stay in and block, and is solid in both of them, but doesn't excel and exceed expectations in both of those areas. And then you're going to have Lachey waiting in the wings, and he's going to learn and develop. And when he gets his shot, then, obviously he's going to get a shot. I don't know where I was going with that, but he's a guy who you can develop in the wings under Evan Ingram, under Adam Troutman, right? Has talent, but needs to maybe sit a couple years and develop. And, tight ends take a couple years to develop, and having him come in and not start right away, I think that's his ideal situation. Although I mention it in every video, as I keep saying, but a lot of Broncos fans will call him a bust in year one if he doesn't see the field a whole lot. And that's just how it is with the fan base. But I do like the idea of having a tight end come in, not playing a whole lot and developing for the future. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but I do like the idea of developing a tight end. And then, of course, you got Nate Atkins and Lucas Krull, who are also on the rosters, who, by the way, as I'm recording this today, Lucas Krull just signed his exclusive right tender. I think that's what it is, to keep him on the roster for next season at a $1 million contract. Moving on to the 6th round at pick 191, Jalen Reed, a safety out of Penn State, was still here. There are 2 safeties from Penn State who are going to get drafted. Obviously, Jalen Reed here, but his teammate Kevin Winston, I expect to go earlier. And Reed is more of a developmental safety, where he's going to be solid in blitzing and stopping the run. But sorry about that. But he's going to mostly need improvement in his coverage area, which obviously you want a safety to be able to cover. So he does need to improve on not only man coverage, but zone coverage and press man coverage. Although as a safety, you're not going to play press as much, but Jalen Reed does need to improve on his coverage, but he is solid in the box if you need him to blitz, if you need an extra DB in there to help stop the run. Jalen Reed is your guy, and I really like Jalen Reed as a developmental safety for the Broncos, someone who doesn't have to start right away, right, with Brandon Jones and Talanoa Hufanga, and then you also have PJ Locke, who you can substitute in if you need. But I like adding some depth to that safety room, right? You got Brandon Jones, you got Hufanga. I do have Reed over PJ Locke here because it's tough to say. I think I might prefer Reed over Locke after last season, but we'll have to see how things play out. But you got PJ Locke, Jalen Reed. You got JL Skinner, a former 6th-round pick out of Boise State in 23, who I still really like as a safety. And then you got Delaren Turner-Yell, a 5th-round pick back in 2022. And I believe this will be his last season in his rookie contract, maybe the last season with the Broncos. We'll have to see, but that's kind of how the safety room plays out for the Broncos at this moment. Maybe not the biggest need for the Broncos, but this is kind of a best player available situation because, honestly, you should probably go best player available, but in the first few rounds, I like to do a mix of best player available and position of need. And then here on day 3, honestly, I like to do straight, maybe outside of Luke Lachey, I did straight best player available here. And so safety, not the biggest need, but I really like Jalen Reed, so he was the BPA player for me. In the 6th round, maybe not BPA, but he's certainly up there. Honestly, at 197, I think he might be BPA. Jaden Blue out of Texas. I'm surprised he fell to the 6th round. I think Jaden Blue is honestly an underrated running back in this class. He's going to be kind of your scat back, and so maybe this is a McLaughlin replacement as a guy who is shifty, can make moves in the open field. He's got speed. I think he ran a 4.38. Now, his 40 time, that's not how you determine if a player is fast, right? Players can play a lot faster or a lot slower on the field than their 40, but he is a fast guy. He's going to make plays in the open field. To me, he's a guy who you don't have to start right away, but he could be your RB2 of the future. You could have Travion Henderson and Jaden Blue as your running back 1 and 2 the future, and then I'm starting to feel pretty comfortable. I know I have him as the RB4 right now, but after this upcoming season, he could honestly be RB2, and you could have Henderson as your RB1, Blue as your RB2, and then Audric Estime as your RB3. And I'm feeling a lot better about that running back room with those players. Maybe Blue doesn't fall that far. He did in this mock draft, and I've seen people kind of lower on him. Like, he's sitting around this range, maybe a little bit earlier than 197. Maybe he's sitting in the 160s-ish, higher 140s. But, man, Blue was a steal. He was a tremendous value at that pick, at pick 197. So, to me, it was an easy pick right here, and I wanted to double dip in that running back class. And then finally here at pick 208, I'm going Jake Majors, center out of Texas. Jonah Monheim was my pick here for a couple mock drafts, but I saw some Broncos fans online mocking Jake Majors to the Broncos, and I said, sure, why not? Sorry for hitting the mics. Why not? Let's mix it up. Let's get some variety in here. And so Jake Majors was my final pick here in the 6th round. Now, he is really solid as a pass protector, does need to develop as a run blocker, but he isn't going to start right away. Right? He's going to be a developmental, he's going to be a depth offensive line piece. He's 6'3", 315 pounds, 23-year-old out of Texas. He's a senior. Now, he's going to be a developmental lineman, right? You have Alex Forsyth, who is kind of your depth center guard. But, we'll see what happens with him. Obviously, we know what happened with him in the blocked PAT. We'll see if he's still on the roster next season. But I do like Jake Majors. He is a center, but can play guard as well. And just kind of giving you a different look because I have used Jonah Monheim in the past for the Broncos. But, yes, that is my mock draft here. You can see the O-line depth. You got Forsyth, you got Majors as the 2 depth pieces, and then you see the starters of Wattenberg, Powers, and Miners. But that's my mock draft. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I know this one was fairly similar to some mocks that I've released in the past, but wanted to get another mock draft out there for you. This time a full 7-round mock draft technically for the Broncos, because I have been doing these shorter mocks of different scenarios for the Broncos. Wanted to get a full 6-round, 6-round, but 7-round technically for the Broncos. I think what I want to do next is, for my next mock draft, I don't know, I was going to do a trade up, stay put, trade down mock draft, but there's only like a couple scenarios I can see the Broncos trading up for, and I don't really think any of them are all too realistic. So maybe I'll do like a quad mock draft, 2 stay put at 22 trade downs. I'll figure it out. But thank you all so much for watching. I do have a couple of other videos coming out very soon that aren't mock drafts. Hopefully, I'm working through those. I'm getting the graphics ready. I'm getting everything ready for those videos. So stay tuned. Hopefully they come out, because I might put them off, and hopefully I don't do that, but we'll see. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.